Danielle Martell. I'm originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia, but I'm now living in the beautiful place of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. So I am the NSCC Community College project facilitator, community facilitator for the Circles of Change and transferring successful rural Indigenous practices into other rural contexts project. It's a lot to say. So yeah, what exactly does this mean? So this project was originally kind of a spin-off of a project that was originally created within a Mi'kmaq community called Paq'tnkek. So that project started in 2014 and 2016 as a result and a response to them recognizing that there wasn't a lot of social supports within their community to address sexualized violence, gender-based violence, and just to help their community as a whole. So through this project, they created something called the Mi'kmaq Community Engagement Toolkit on sexualized violence. So a lot of wonderful things have come from this toolkit and the approaches on how we support survivors and victims around sexualized violence. So that's kind of where my project came on. So my project, it's an outreach project in 3 communities, Canso and NSCC here in the Stait Area Campus, as well as Paq'tnkek Linconville and Sunnyvale, which are all communities in rural Nova Scotia. So our mandate and kind of what we're doing is just helping survivors connect those resources within the communities and taking those service providers in the communities and linking the dots. So I kind of have been telling people, like, I'm the Google Maps of like social supports. And yeah, so I kind of have been trying to connect those dots for our students and also doing like relations with the campus with their sexualized violence policy and trying to kind of bridge those gaps, as well as also doing educational pieces around consent, talking about, you know, what is consent, demystifying that. And then also we're going to be doing like bystander training and supporting that campus kind of community. So that's kind of me with my professional lens. Then I kind of, like, how did I get here? Because obviously I'm not from Cape Breton. So how did I get to this wonderful place? What led me to this amazing job? Well, that's like a whole other story. So I was working in Halifax in a great job in a similar field, but I recognized that although it was wonderful, there was only so much I could do with it. And I recognized that there was only, like, I found myself kind of in a slump that although it was making me happy, it wasn't, at the end of the day, I felt like I was just going through life going through the motions. And that really wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't fulfilling at all for me. I knew that from day one, I wanted to go into women empowerment and helping support those people who have been just dealing with life. So on a whim, I applied for NSCC, went back to school as a mature student, and then 5 days before I had to renegotiate my contract in Halifax, I got the call to move down to this wonderful place. Looked at my husband, said, "Hey, so how do you feel about Cape Breton?" He was lovely and was very, very great and very supportive, and he said, "Okay, we're doing this chapter." And I said, "Yep, we're doing this chapter." So he stuck around in Halifax and Bedford for a little bit. I called my in-laws and said, "How do you feel about me kind of hanging out in your place for the next 2 years while I go to school?" And they were very gracious. So yeah, then we kind of uprooted our lives in Halifax, left everything we knew to move down here and kind of start our lives. Honestly, I can truly say it was probably the best idea and just impulse, I guess, that I could ever experience. And I think truly I can advocate to say, like, follow your gut instinct, because yeah, initially I didn't want to take that leap because there were so many other factors, like, oh my gosh, what if I'm not going to find a job? What if I don't find a place to live? Like, all these crazy things. But at the end of the day, I have a house now. I'm living in a house here in Cape Breton in a wonderful place. My husband's living here now with me. I'm in this amazing job. So my best piece of advice to people is always follow your gut and just take that instinct. Because sometimes it's always right. So in the back here in my office, so I'm sitting in my office right now. I have hanging here a red dress. It's actually my red dress. It represents all the missing and murdered Indigenous women through, I don't know if you all are privy to the investigation, but as we know, there are countless women in our Indigenous communities that are going missing every year from gender-based violence through many reasons. So this is just kind of supporting them and supporting the investigation, and hopefully there will be some reconciliation and just some insight and justice around this matter, because again, it's an alarming number of women that are going missing every year that we really need to speak to. So yeah, I hung my red dress in my office here in solidarity for those women, because I feel like a large piece of my project is working with those women who have been traumatized or have had that systemic trauma. So I feel like, in solidarity, I feel like we should be standing with them and supporting them and uplifting these women. So yeah, that's my red dress. And then next to it is a painting by a local artist. She's a Mi'kmaq artist, and it's the inspiration of life. So it's Mother Nature, and she is it's to empower women. So yeah, those are kind of the two main pieces of my office here. I would say I work with all students, but part of our campus has a large Indigenous and Mi'kmaq community. So I do work alongside of our elder Judy Peters, who is amazing. And yeah, I think it's just in recognizing their culture and their cultural and how, for years and years and years, those cultural norms, those cultural practices have never been really emphasized in the schooling system or even practiced, right? So when you're coming into an establishment or a formal establishment, we had to recognize that this is not typically the environment in which their cultural practices were upheld. When we look at the residential school system, there was that trauma, right? So I think having that in our frameworks when we're going into a schooling system, or just even in life in general, just having that knowledge of okay, because of that history, it can be traumatic, and there is that ongoing generational trauma. So just having that deep-seated knowledge to know that, okay, treat everybody as a human being, and courteous and respectful regardless, because everybody has a story, and and recognize that story. So I have been telling folks from day one, I am not of Indigenous background. I grew up here in Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen. But what I've been saying to my colleagues and just people on campus in general is just kind of be courteous. And if there are those cultural practices, join in and ask to join in. I went to a powwow a couple of weeks ago. I took my partner, and it was one of his first communal powwows, and they loved it. And just having those dialogues and that openness to kind of experience other cultures, and that knowledge of hey, what is this? This is something new. And if you don't know, ask. Just ask in a respectful way, hey, why is it you do this? I'm curious, why do you smudge? What is the practice of smudging? Yeah, I just think just having those open dialogues and allowing those stories to come through, and why those cultural practices are the way that they are. If you're just upfront and honest, and when I have people come into my office, I will be the first one to say, I might not know this, or I am still new to this role, so bear with me. I don't know about these cultural practices, but could you tell me more? Or I don't know about this subject. Can I look into it and get back to you? I think just having that open dialogue and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and saying, you know, hey, I don't know everything. That's okay. That's completely okay. And in fact, it's genuine and sincere, and I feel like it'll come across a lot more respectful rather than the know-it-all attitude. I mean, with work, I do a lot of work around like women in trades and helping to support women who are in non-traditional roles. So beyond working with our First Nations communities here on campus, I do a lot of work with like uplifting and empowering our women on campus who, you know, typically they might be the only women on their work site. So how do you navigate that? Or typically when you're going into an interview and you know you're the only woman going into that interview with an all-male staff who are typically, you know, you have never had a woman on campus on the work site. How do you navigate that, right? Those are barriers that women face every day, but you know, there's not a whole lot of dialogue around that. There are some amazing organizations that are now coming forth, like Women Unlimited. So it's getting our students here on campus to kind of recognize they're not alone, and there are these amazing resources out there that will support them and help empower them, because as I said, there's not a ton of dialogue around those pieces. And oftentimes women feel kind of isolated, like, oh, I am the only woman on site, and oh, I do have to work double hard to prove myself. Let alone like the second shift where, you know, they're going home and they're being the mother, the support system, the making the dinner, the feeding the young infant child. And then when they go onto the work site, they themselves, it might not be a practice, but internally a lot of them are feeling like, oh, I have to work and prove myself. Well, I feel like they need to have that sisterhood of like equal community that understands. So yeah, you know, I think every woman should have her own sisterhood or tribe surrounding her, of those people who are your champions. They are backing you 100%. And I mean, they don't have to be female. They can just be like your community members. They can be your teachers. They can be colleagues. They can be relatives. But just those people who are in your corner to like back you 100% to say, yes, you've got this. Because let's be real, life happens. And when you're on a work site, for example, these women, you know, you've had a day where things just didn't go according, and then you're going home. Well, you know, sometimes you need that self-care time. So to have that community to really like say, okay, I need me time for a second. I need to recharge. and just have that group to vent to even. I think it's so important to have. I mean, the project is ever changing, so we're still unfolding it. It's a 5-year project. So yeah, it's still in the evolutionary stages. Like we still have a roadmap, but we're trying to navigate how it's going to roll out on each area and kind of where the gaps are in services. So yeah, that's kind of why I've been saying like I'm the Google Maps of services, because yeah, it's just trying to navigate like what are the needs, what are the barriers, how do you overcome that, and how do we support? So yeah. So here at NSCC, for the first 2 weeks of school, a project that I took on was I wanted to end stigma on campus, a presence here on campus that the student body was going to take on. So myself and the Antigonish Women's Resource Center, through our project, we made a photo booth. And so we had a declaration on the wall that said, you know, NSCC, all student body community members deserve the right to free access, safe environment here on campus. So, and then they took a sign that said, I say no too, and then it could be various words. So it could be like transphobia, violence against women, ableism, gender-based violence, rape culture. And then on the backs of these cards have a little blurb about, you know, what it is that word. So it's an educational piece as well as like a photo booth. Yeah, we made the video montage here for the campus. It's on our Facebook page for NSCC Stait Area Campus. So you can check that out. And it's just like a little video of all of us standing up against stigma, against like what we support on campus and what we don't support on campus, and acknowledging and being present, and just recognizing, right? And I guess the best lesson is just follow your instincts, and you know, if it doesn't turn out, there's another day. You learn from it, you know?